Welcome back. I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts, another beautiful convertible for a cold winter day. This is the 1966 Triumph TR4A. Now, the big thing about the TR4A is the fact that it was available with an independent rear suspension, but this one doesn't have that. This still has the live rear suspension, which frankly, I'm more excited to drive. I think it'll be a little more exciting, and it's a lighter version of the TR4A. I've always had an affinity for these cars, not just because they're so happy and cute and perfectly sized. I think it's a little smaller and a little more handsome even than the TR6, but my dad had one. This was like, I think his first car was a Volvo P1800. Then he had a TR4A that he bought not running, got it running, and has plenty of teenage calamity stories in his TR4A. Driving around these roads, very local actually to where we are today. Powering our TR4A today is a 2.1 liter inline 4-cylinder. It's got about 104 horsepower. I don't know. We'll put it on a dyno someday. We'll find out what it really makes. Who knows? But it's light, it's happy, and it has the cutest hood in the world. Somehow, this is a cute and muscular vehicle. It looks tough, and it's really wild how tough it actually appears because it shouldn't be. It's tiny. The first thing you notice when you stare at it from the front or the rear is just how narrow it is. It is a very narrow little car, but there was a TR4 before it. Now, one of the big things about the TR4 was that it only had the live rear axle. The 4A has some upgrades. You get a slightly different grille, you get slightly different bumpers. There's some little changes here, and the Triumph people, please sound off in the comments. I honestly thought before I did a little bit of research on this car that all of the A's were independent rear suspension. I was unaware that that was an option, but here we are. Some of the coolest things about this car are just the lines. It's not flat. Everything has some beauty to it and some sculpting. That's something that you don't get on the TR6. The TR6 is a lot more boxy and square, and while beautiful in its own right, I think the TR4A is the one for me. Up front, we have disc brakes, and in the rear, drums, and gluing us to the road on a 15-inch wheel, a really beautiful 15-inch wheel at that, is a 205 section tire. Plenty of sidewall, which we love to see on a little car, but I will tell you, when we're driving, we're going to go over some little bumps. It's a Triumph. It's gonna be a little rickety, just a little bit. This one is in really good condition though, and I'm thrilled to be able to show you and drive it today. So let's get under the hood. On the passenger side, we have a little pull here that lifts our bonnet, and this is a very sharp hood. Man, oh man, do not let this fall on you because it will take your fingers with it for sure. This is really scary, honestly. So yeah, little kids, keep them away from the hood of this thing. And when you put the hood down, always make sure you've cleared it like you're starting an airplane, you know? Anyway, up here, this has been changed slightly. Typically, the TR4A would have two SU carburetors. This has twin Webers. I would assume these have better flow and maybe gives it a little more punch, but it's tuned really well. I was out driving it earlier and it is a blast. It's funny though, you just get in here and there's so much fender in here. But yeah, this little 2.1 liter 4-cylinder filling up this engine bay like it's a big block Chevy. I guess there's a little bit of room up front, but it's pretty cool and everything looks pretty accessible. These are big DIY cars, you know. This is definitely one of those vehicles that if you are someone who likes to get your hands dirty, you like to have a project, this is very doable, you know. Everything is at your disposal here, and there's so much knowledge about these cars. In the rear, first, let's just take a look. I love these taillights. It's so gorgeous. This is kind of that Ferrari style too, like the 250s, man. They've got those nice tall taillights. This has such a gorgeous style, and you'd be able to know if it had the independent rear suspension because it would say IRS on the back. Before we get into the trunk, we've got this gorgeous twin center exit exhaust. Now, it's not a dual exhaust. It actually just, you know, splits off somewhere in the middle of the car, but we won't hold it against it. It looks really cool like this. Back here, formidable trunk space and a fire extinguisher, a spare wheel and tire. We like that. And this is probably one of the most reasonably affordable, cool British sports cars you can get into and still be looked at like you're a king. So let's start it up, get out on the road and see what it's like to drive the TR4A. Well, belt in, this one has a little racing belt, which I kind of appreciate. Nice to have. There we go. And then we have a 4-speed manual gearbox. No dog leg, trickery here, but reverse, you gotta pull. It's actually kind of a hard pull, up and down. So that's a beautiful lockout that I very much appreciate. Car's warm, we don't need to choke it, but there's your choke. Key ignition here, and let's just see if she starts. Beautiful. She's chirping at us just a little bit. I think there's a belt that just goes beep, 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 and it'll go away in a second once it gets a little heat in it. But this 4-cylinder sounds really angry. We've got a flyaway handbrake, and let's go for a drive. Bit of this car is tactility. It just, you feel every sensation in the road and in the car. This one has what feels to be a pretty aggressive clutch. It catches right at the bottom of the pedal, and it's really sticky. I mean, this is a grabby clutch. You got to be cautious. You got to be really on the ball when you're slipping this clutch, because it'll just grab. You don't want to stall it. The steering is sharp and direct, as you would imagine in a car this size, and it just gives 1960s Miata vibes. The gearing's really short and snappy, and it encourages the revs. It wants to be flogged a little bit, and it's fun, and it sounds really good. And I also think that it's inoffensive. Sometimes you drive cars that they're loud and shouty and almost too masculine. I hate describing cars as masculine, but sometimes they're just too in your face. A big shouty V8 can be a little more intimidating, and people will look at you with like a snarl, like, ugh, this guy has to prove something. In this, there's nothing to prove. You're just having fun. So people don't, ooh, great color on that. Hello. Yes. short gearing's great, but if we're going to compare this gearbox to the Alfa Romeo, the Giulietta that I drove recently, I gotta say this feels a little more fragile. That third gear synchro is just, I feel it. You know, it's not a crunch, I know it's there. That was not a sensation I ever once got in the Alfa. And so again, it just goes to show you, when you drive a lot of contemporary cars from a certain time period, you start to see who was kind of ahead of their time, who was ahead of the game. And this is what you would consider to be a pretty normal, fun, wonderful sports car. So when you get into the Alfa and everything just feels completely perfect and really solid, that's when you start to appreciate those things. And if you don't drive a lot of these cars, it can be difficult to understand why one maybe costs $100 more than the other. The true beauty of a car like this is where we are right now. I'm in a position where I've been pulled over on this road before, not going very fast. Having any car with any sense of real speed and power can put you in a position where you can lose your license, or, you know, have some unpleasant or uncomfortable conversations with the authorities. Now, when you have a little British sports car with 100 horsepower, chances are they're going to pull you over just to look at the car. But if they do, you're not actually going fast. And if you're a driver, you get to enjoy the sensation of driving without having to really break the speed limit by much. Much as I would love to just hammer through all these roads, what's up ahead is exactly why we can't always do that, because you don't want to be in a position where you're just a big old cloud. Yeah. See, people like it. They're not mad at me. They're like, yeah, that's cool. You're out. I mean, granted, it's winter and I'm out here with the top down and earmuffs and a camera on my face, but you know, there's a level of respect that people have for fun. And when you don't look like you're having fun at the expense of others, it seems more likely that they're going to join in on it and appreciate you. I'm looking at the Harley guys on that one, because they do have fun at the expense of others. I don't really care that you're on a motorcycle, but blaring and blasting a unpleasant sounding engine at people gets old. I am very cold. Ah, yes, Route 2 traffic, my favorite thing in the world. And we're probably not using much fuel. That's nice. Ooh, some bumps. So other than the fact that it's not a warm summer day with the top down in my little Roadster, I can't complain much. This is a blast to drive, and I hope someday to get an opportunity to drive it in the summer, get a little sunburn, and enjoy it for what it's supposed to be used for. But it feels more sure-footed than the TR6. TR6 felt a little sloppy, a little unwieldy. It kind of felt like it was too narrow. This doesn't. It definitely narrow. It's not wide, but I don't feel like I'm, you know, tiptoeing around its width. Look how big a Mini Cooper looks compared to me. So that's a quick drive in the Triumph TR4A with a live rear axle. Sure, the rear end feels a little floaty, and that's part of the joy of it. It's like managing this car around a corner is a real joy, some serious entertainment. And I think the word zippy is applicable for this. Look at that Miata. It looks huge compared to this. It's a zippy car, and it's fun. It's revvy. It's got short gearing. You feel like you're becoming part of it. This is a real like British sports car vibe, and it doesn't disappoint in 2024. So if you were hunting for some sort of excitement in the form of a non-wildly expensive Triumph or sports car, this might be the thing for you, because I'm having a very good time. And especially if you're a DIYer, you should have no fear with this, because it'll get the job done. So thanks to Bond Group for the opportunity to drive this TR4A. It's a car that's always been part of my life because my dad always told me stories about it. And now I know what it was like. And I bet this was really hysterically fun in the late 60s and early 70s for him. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing, and appreciating the vintage vehicles on the channel. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.